sunshine. I'm not Alexi, Lalas. I'm Stu Holden, back again. Welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue colored glasses. This show, a special live roster reaction show ahead of the U.S. men's national team matches against Paraguay and Uruguay. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, and guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and Fox Soccer researcher, writer extraordinaire. How we doing, Mosse?
Stu, you're getting better and better at that intro. You've had a lot of at-bats recently with Alexi's flaky schedule, you know.
As many at-bats as the Blue Jays, to still be in the hunt. But like the great Dodgers, we will rise again and win, which is an incredible game. I know you guys have discussed what a win for the Dodgers. But we're back, Mosse, and we've got another roster drop, man. It's just kind of exciting. We're inching closer to the finish line here for the World Cup.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the U.S.'s next two games, they will face Paraguay in Chester, Pennsylvania, and then Uruguay in Tampa, Florida, two South American opponents. I'm excited about it, although a very interesting roster named for those two games.
Interesting to say the least, as is every roster, if we're being honest, these days, because we've been through this period of Gold Cups and experimentation, and then now, as we said, this is the second to last window before the roster would be named. There is a friendly window in June ahead of the World Cup, but at that point you will have your team. So as ever, we look at this and we start to analyze it. So with all that on the table, where do we want to start with this, my friend?
Before we go through the names, we'll take it back to front, but I do want to make a general point. Alexi is not here, but if you've listened to this pod over the last 2 months or so, you know what his big gripe is. As we get closer to the World Cup, he wanted to see a bit more urgency in Mauricio Pochettino's squad selections. He wants the squad to at least resemble what the World Cup one is going to be, so we can draw definitive conclusions from these last friendlies ahead of the tournament. And we're not really seeing that. Obviously, there are some players that are out injured, but then there are others that Pochettino is very willing to leave out for reasons that I'm not sure this late in the cycle. I think he's acquiescing to club manager complaints a bit too much. So I think the big story today is how many notable names are out. We'll go through it, but just overall thought on what I just said.
Yeah, it's a fascinating reflection of the modern game today. And it's this constant push and pull between the international game and the club game. And as the club game has grown immensely with competitions like we saw for the first time this past summer, the Club World Cup, and the amount of money that went into that, the amount of players that missed things like the Gold Cup to then go and be a part of the Club World Cup, to now cup competitions, increased amount of games that you're playing in the Champions League. That's the reality of now being a top level player, and Christian Pulisic is probably the biggest proof of that last season when AC Milan were in the Champions League and got far in the Coppa Italia and all these different things. These guys are playing upwards of 50 to 60 games, which before was like an astronomical number. I remember, was it the 2018 World Cup when Croatia got to the final and they lost to France? Luka Modric had played just an insane amount of games. You might remember what that amount of games was, though.
I don't remember exactly, but Real Madrid won the Champions League year and then getting all the way to the World Cup final. Yeah,
it was basically the maximum number that a player could have played. And we looked at that number and we thought, wow, like I didn't even know a body was capable of playing that many games at that intensity and at that level. And now I look at the club game and these guys are playing so many games and so many minutes to now we're having these conversations about, well, Weston McKennie's got a new coach, so we got to leave him back. Chris Richards has played too many games, and his coach at Crystal Palace is not happy that he was brought into the national team and played 90 minutes in back-to-back windows. Like, that wasn't an issue before, and it shouldn't be an issue. He's an important player for the U.S. men's national team. I don't get why it's a big deal that he's brought in for a single window, and Pochettino, I mean, heaven forbid, he plays a player over the course of 2 games that is important to his team, that he's experimenting with a new system and has a self-served interest of saying, I need that guy to play. I just thought it's unfair then of Crystal Palace to say, well, he shouldn't have played that. You know what you should do? Maybe rest him for some of your club games that you're playing every single week. He doesn't need to play every minute in those games. So, like, I get it that it's case by case, and I'm not being this, I don't think I'm being unreasonable in my take than inspecting that still we want to have our best players available. And if I was Mauricio Pochettino, I would want my best players available because, as he said, even after this November window, the reality is he's going to have these guys one more time in March before he has to make a decision on the 26 guys that will be representing the United States in a World Cup. That's not a lot of time with your team. And that's the difference between the club and the international game now.
I agree with you. 25 players were selected, including 4 goalkeepers. We'll start there. Roman Celentano, Matt Freese, Jonathan Klinsmann, and Patrick Schulte. No Matt Turner. Until recently, I was still holding out hope Matt Turner would be the starter at the World Cup. I'm now wondering if he's even going to be on the squad.
I'm with you. And I've got to think that Matt Turner's with you too, because he was a part of the last roster with the U.S., and we thought, well, okay, he's back. Matt Turner's playing with the New England Revolution, finishing down the stretch. Well, maybe he splits games with Freese. No, Matt Freese got both games, and I think, as we've discussed, is the nailed-on starter right now for the national team, and it's his shirt to lose. As far as I'm concerned, looking at these guys, Celentano, Klinsmann, and Schulte, these guys are all battling to be on the roster. But really more concerning, I think, for Matt Turner is that there was a recent article in The Athletic which said that he's training with Crystal Palace currently, a team that he was under contract with before he went to Forest and then to owned by Lyon. I don't think he's ever going to play for Lyon. And it said he was training to get fit and to stay sharp to be a part of this November window. And then the roster comes out and Matt Turner is not on that roster. If he's going to stay through the next season with the New England Revolution, which is part of the deal, he's not going to play a competitive game now until late February or March. That's a long time for a goalkeeper who, by the way, has not played a lot of minutes over the past 2 years. So as far as I'm concerned, Matt Turner is not only on the outside looking in at a starting position, he's on the outside looking in at a roster position, which is cause for concern for him. And I don't know what he can do other than play a great start of the season in the spring to put himself back in that position.
Years ago, you got a lot of grief on Twitter. Back then, it was still Twitter. When Zach Steffen's move to Manchester City was announced, and you said, I don't think this is a good move for his career, and it played out that way. And Matt Turner, too, going to Europe has proven to be a mistake. It's interesting with these U.S. goalkeepers. I know Alexi and I interviewed Brad Friedel once about it, and he said, yeah, in recent years, American goalkeepers making some really questionable moves to Europe that I think need to be looked at in the future.
I have to say, though, if you're Matt Turner in 2022, you're coming off the back of a World Cup. What was it? He moved pre-World Cup or post-World Cup? I'm forgetting. I'm jogging my memory here, but it was at a point where, look, if Arsenal comes knocking for you and there's a chance that you have to go to play for Arsenal, even if it's going to be a backup at that stage in your career, Matt Turner has an amazing story. At the point he picked up soccer in high school and he was a baseball player and learned goalkeeping, and his journey from then to college as really not a top recruit to now being a professional, not only being a professional representing his country in a World Cup. I don't think there was a world when he was a kid that he even fathomed he would have had the opportunity to play for Arsenal. So I don't begrudge him for that. I think what has come after that has been the concern, is that he goes to Palace and then he goes to Nottingham Forest and he starts for a little, then he's out of the team and then he's not playing, and then you're just this constant backup. And what has happened is that now, as he said, the greatest honor he had in his life was to represent his country in a World Cup. Well, he got to do that, but now he might not get to do that again in a home World Cup because of what has happened to him at the club level. I think had he been playing every week in MLS for the past 3 years, I actually don't think there's a doubt he would have been the starter for 2026. And I think that's got to sit with him a little bit, where he starts to think, in one hand, I got to do that, and I got to play in the Premier League, and I got to play for Arsenal. But on the other hand, was it worth it when it's all said and done that I miss out on potentially, it's not done yet, but potentially having been that starter for 2026?
We move to defenders. Now, I'm presuming the U.S.'s formation is a 3-4-2-1 moving forward, so I'm going to judge this roster through that lens. So at right wing back, I'm going to call it, you have Serginho Dest and Alex Freeman. Left wing back, you've got Max Arfston and John Tolkin. And then at center back, you've got Tim Ream, Mark McKenzie, Miles Robinson, Austin Trusty, and then Joe Scally is sort of a versatile jack of all trades along that back line. So what do you make of that group of players?
I got to say, I'm disappointed not to have Chris Richards there. I understand the reasons why. We've already been through that. But I think the reason I'm mostly disappointed that he's not been brought in, and that Pochettino has conceded, look, I'm going to give Crystal Palace this one, is because I just think that I'm very bullish on this back three. We've already discussed that at length in the past. But the difference being Richards does not have a lot of reps as the center of the back three. And I think that Pochettino has identified that he's going to be that guy. So now, to me, whatever difference in formation or personnel you're going to play as part of this three. I'm wondering who's going to play at the center. Is it going to be Miles Robinson? Is he going to play Tim Ream there maybe? And we see somebody else at the left side of that center back. I'm interested to see Joe Scally. I hope he gets a rep at the right side of the center back of the three, because I think he could be good as a hybrid player, potentially that, can rotate around. In the last camp, we actually saw, was it Miles Robinson was playing on the right side of the three center backs, and he ended up quite often as a right back. So that could suit Scally pretty well if you have Sergiño Dest and you could push him all the way up, if you could push Alex Freeman all the way up on the right-hand side. So I think just like looking at that generally, what I would say of this back line group is you have options and you have guys that can play in different positions. And I think ultimately when the World Cup roster is decided, those last couple of spots are going to go to guys that could play as a right back, as a right center back, can play as a left center back, can play as a left back. And you need to be able to play more than just one position in that back line to be a part of this system for Pochettino.
Keep in mind, Tristan Blackman banged up right now. Cameron Carter-Vickers, a long-term absence. I think he's out of the picture.
What do you think of Anthony Robinson not being involved? He's not had a lot of minutes. He's been banged up, but he was part of the last roster for Pochettino and didn't play. So now you're not bringing him in this time? It feels to me maybe he's, again, trying to get him back into the team with Fulham because he recognizes how important that could be?
That one I'm actually okay with. He hasn't played since the last window. So you brought him in for one window just to keep him sort of in the mix, but now leave him back there to recover. But as far as Chris Richards, I agree with you. This is insane to me.
Yeah.
He's in the starting lineup today against AZ Alkmaar. He played 90 minutes at the weekend against Brentford and played well. There is nothing wrong with Chris Richards. The only match he's missed for Palace the last couple of weeks is that Carabao Cup win over Liverpool, and Oliver Glasner afterwards downplayed whatever issue he had. So this is crazy. And you're right. It does create this interesting question of how he's going to arrange the back three for these games. He could move Ream to the center, which presumably would open the door for Mark McKenzie to be the left center back. But I'm not a huge McKenzie fan. I like getting Miles Robinson in there. And then I agree with you. Joe Scally in that right center back spot is interesting to me. So, yeah, different ways he could go there.
Yeah, I could go either way, if I'm being honest, on the Anthony Robinson one. But selfishly, I think you could view it not understanding fully where he's at health-wise, because they don't talk about what management and what he's capable of. But to me, it would be a chance to bring him in and let him play a few minutes and start to build some confidence and some repetitions of actually being on the field. If he's going to be in that position, ideally for Fulham to get on the field, why not start that with the national team, which is, by the way, what he said. I'm jumping the gun of getting to the forwards, but he said he's going to do that with Ricardo Pepi, who's been playing and coming off the bench and scoring some goals. He's saying, look, we want to get Pepi in and build his confidence. To me, Anthony Robinson needs some confidence and he needs some fitness. So why not give the guy minutes? I just don't see a world where John Tolkien, if I'm being honest, is on the World Cup roster. And so having him in this camp, I think Max Harveston has pretty much established himself as the secondary piece to Anthony Robinson, if Robinson is back. And then even then, I would be more confident in flipping Tim Weah to the left or Sergiño Dest to the left, more so than I would be in having Tolkien on the roster. So to me, that feels kind of like a wasted opportunity.
And then we go to the midfield. I know Gio is listed as a midfielder, and he is the juiciest name in this entire roster, but I want to focus on those two central midfield positions again in a 3-4-2-1. You've got Tyler Adams, Sebastian Berhalter, Aiden Morris, Christian Roldan, Tanner Tessman, Sean Zawadzki. We know Tyler is going to be a starter, but it feels like there's a real battle for that other spot. Weston McKennie and Yunus Musah not in the squad. We can get to that in a minute. But do you think Christian Roldan has a real path here to being a starter at the World Cup?
Being a starter, I don't see it right now, but I absolutely see him on this roster. And I think we've discussed Roldan at such length. You guys have, I have. He's a perfect example. Actually, I was watching the Sounders play their playoff game the other night against Minnesota United, and I made a point of stopping the TV. I paused it. I was watching with my 9-year-old daughter, who's a center midfielder, and I had her watch Roldan on, it was Jordan Morris's goal, where he was when the ball was cleared, how quickly he anticipated the play, the way in which he made the run in behind, just every single part of that play epitomized to me the type of player he is and what he brings on the field. And then off the field as well, I spoke about his character and his leadership. And he's a guy, if you're a coach, you just want on your team. And you hear players and people talk about it, but I think for Pochettino, it was to get him into camp. And then once he got Roldan in camp, he saw, wow, I understand now why this guy has been on different teams and what he can do. So I'm absolutely not ruling out the possibility that Christian Roldan could be starting for the national team in a game in the World Cup. And it doesn't have to mean the first game, doesn't have to mean the third game, doesn't have to mean a knockout game. I think there's a world that I can absolutely see. And I would feel fully confident in starting him in this team and know that he would put on a really good performance for the national team.
I know you're also a big Tessman fan. So of the players on this roster, what would be your preferred central midfield combo?
In the first match, it's Paraguay, right? The first match for the U.S. I would be starting. I'd like to see Tyler Adams. He missed out on the last camp, and congratulations to him and his wife. They had the birth of their child. So he is now back with the team. I would like to see Tyler Adams, and I would like to see Tanner Tessman because I was really impressed with Tessman in the last window.
All right. Now, Musah, we know, is very much out of the picture right now. You'd say right now he's likelier to not be on the World Cup squad?
I think he's got a lot of work to do to get back in the team.
Yeah, Doug McIntyre recently on this pod predicted he would be on the squad. And Doug, that one's not looking too great right now. Weston McKennie's absence from this roster is insane to me. There's nothing wrong with him. He just played 90 minutes against Sporting in the Champions League. And the explanation that because Juve just changed coaches, so let him over there with Spalletti. Spalletti's already coached a couple of games and started Weston and said nice things about him. So there's no suggestion that Spalletti's arrival is going to cost Weston minutes. So why couldn't he come and play these two friendlies for the U.S. during the international break? That one is absolutely mystifying to me.
When I think about this decision to leave Weston McKennie off the roster, I think what we're seeing here is the club coach in Mauricio Pochettino that is in his first job as an international coach now and has dealt with these conversations between international coach and club coach and different interests and the converging of these different interests. And I think what he's doing is he's playing ball with a coach, but I don't think he needs to play ball in this scenario because Weston has done this before. He's a big boy. He knows how to handle the changing of coach. He knows what that responsibility is now at a top club. He's been through however many number of managers at Juventus, and he's had to prove himself time after time. So unless this was Weston saying to Mauricio Pochettino, I don't want to come in, I think I need to stay here, I think that Weston McKennie needs to be with this group because one of the big things that we have talked about with this national team is the lack of leadership. And he is a guy that has that potential to be a leader in the clubhouse. And he leads by his actions off the field, on the field. But he's also a guy I've challenged to say, I want to see a little bit more from him because I know what he's capable of. Not just from a playing standpoint, but his maturity now as a player of being a leader, of being a captain, where he could be that for the national team. But he's not going to get that opportunity if he's back at Juventus and guys are looking at him and saying, well, Mauricio doesn't feel like we need to bring him in because he's got to fight his own fight over there. Instead of being in with the team and building what this national team is trying to build off of the last window where they didn't have a loss and they were growing. So I'm disappointed that Mauricio Pochettino has chosen in this instance to say, I don't want to pick a fight with Spalletti and leave Weston McKennie there. I think McKennie, to your point, would be absolutely fine if he came in, and it's not going to affect in any way his standing with the team at Juventus.
Now, he's still my preferred option to start alongside Tyler Adams in central midfield, but I'm not sure Pochettino even sees him in that position because in the last window when he played him, it was further up the field as one of those two behind the center forward. So figuring out Weston McKennie's role in this team right now it's a bit perplexing to me.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of that role, it would put him in a competition with?
Yeah, so let's go there. In terms of those two positions behind the center forward, you've got Gio Reyna, Diego Luna, and Brendan Aronson. Keep in mind, no Pulisic, no Malik Tillman, no Timmy Weah, no Zendeja. So that opened the door for Gio. I don't hate it in light of the fact that all those players are missing. So if you work your way further down the depth chart enough, eventually you get to a point where Gio is probably the best option out there. So why not give him a look? But this has to be last chance saloon for Gio Reyna, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at Alexi's tweet, which we've popped up here. And, I feel like we have to pay that off because, his name is on the podcast, I suppose. Gio Reyna, what U.S. men's national team player in history has been given more chances, opportunity, and grace, a special privilege and faith often afforded to undeniable but unrealized young talent? Hope he takes full advantage of it. Matt Turner has to be shaking his head. Okay. I think it's not fair to really put him and Matt Turner in the same bucket. The situations are completely different. The big blow up that happened with Gio did not happen on Mauricio Pochettino's watch. That was with Greg Berhalter. You guys don't need me to recite the history there. The most recent history that I would say has happened with Pochettino was allegedly, and nobody has really truly addressed this publicly, but that there were rumblings of certain attitude and different demeanors in camp. And the March window, which was the last window that Gio Reyna and Joe Scally were both a part of, was the one that ended horribly wrong. The U.S. lost to Canada and then Panama, or vice versa, in the Nations League. And it was a huge disappointment and also a big wake-up call, I think, for Pochettino about the state of the national team. So fast forward, Gio Reyna is back in. He's not being gifted this opportunity because, he's Gio Reyna and the name. He is a good player. We know he is a player with undeniable talent. He's also playing at a big club. He's not the first person that's been called up when he's not playing every single week a lot of minutes for his club. But what I will say for Gio Reyna, this is not Gio Reyna's last chance from a playing perspective, but it is absolutely his last chance from a culture and a team perspective. And I mean that to say the big point of emphasis from Mauricio Pochettino was about building a team, and a team that cared, and a team that had identity, and a team that was together. And if Gio Reyna cannot show over the course of the next 10 days where he is in camp over these two games, not necessarily what he just does on the field, but what he does off the field and how he fits in. And does he have a good attitude? Is he a good teammate? How is he with the coaching staff? I know that stuff is very important to Mauricio Pochettino when he thinks about not just putting 26 guys together from a talent perspective, but putting a team together. And Gio has to show that he can fit into that team and that he can not just fit in, but he can add significant value both on and off the field. And I truly believe, look, he could play the best games he could ever play in his life next spring, but he will not be a part of this roster if he doesn't show in this window and then potentially in March that he can be a big part of this team.
Just to put some numbers on it, he has played 130 minutes for Gladbach this season, 0 goals, 0 assists. And he's played a grand total of 20 minutes under Mauricio Pochettino. As you mentioned, it was that third-place game in the Nations League against Canada in March at SoFi. We were there along with Alexi. We taped a post-game show after that match. So we'll see what he can do here. Now, as for the missing players at this position, Zendejas has been out. It sounds like he could be back for Club America this weekend against Toluca. Malik Tillman, this one bothers me a little bit as well because he came back for Leverkusen against Benfica in the Champions League, came on early in the second half, looked good. I presume he's going to play a fair amount of minutes against Heidenheim at the weekend, might even start that game. So is Tillman not a player that Pochettino could have brought?
No, I think when
You're
I think
okay
about
with that one?
I'm okay with Tillman. I think just when I think about a player that has had little niggles from the start of the season with Leverkusen, in and out of the lineup, comes in, plays the 2 games with the U.S., picks up a bit of a knock, and then he goes back to his club, misses a couple games. I think he's a player truly that needs a bit of rhythm and consistency in his play, and his body just needs a break. And the other reason I'm okay with that, he played the whole Gold Cup. He was outstanding. Pochettino knows what he's got there. I think he's gonna be a starter at the World Cup, and so I think leaving him this window, and then absolutely have him back for March.
And then Pulisic, on your last appearance on this pod, you were annoyed that Milan would complain about Pulisic getting hurt in the last window, but their complaints bore fruit because Pochettino has left him out of this one. It sounds like he's going to be back this weekend for Milan against Parma. So how does it sit with you that he might play in that game and then not play for the U.S.?
Pulisic again.
You're okay with that
managing
one as well.
So
the big ones for you, big ones for you are Richards and McKennie.
Richards and McKennie. I just think that these guys are going to be important parts of the team. We know that. That's not me providing some earth-shattering analysis. And I just think that when you're changing system, you're starting to build some momentum results-wise off the back of that. I just think you need to keep that going. So disappointed not to have 2 key pieces a part of this.
By the way, on the topic of Christian Pulisic, maybe I'm being paranoid, but I've gotten a couple of texts about this. There's a video circulating right now starring Alexi and I, and the way it was edited, it made it seem as if I picked Christian Pulisic over Vinicius Jr. Now, Stu, you've known me a long time. Who do you think I think is a better player, Pulisic or Vinicius Jr.?
I think that I would put all of my money and your money on the fact that you would pick Vinicius Jr. over Christian Pulisic there. The internet has a funny way of editing different things, you know, fake news.
Seconds earlier, I had picked Rodrigo over Pulisic,
Yeah,
so it would stand to reason that I would also...
I watched Alexi Holden over, you know, I'm not going to go into that right now on my take in that.
All right, so let's go to center forward, which amazingly enough, I think is the most settled position on this roster right now, because the three that Pochettino picked for this window are the three best for me. They're all in good form. You've got Folarin Balogun, Ricardo Pepi, and Haji Wright. Balogun, we know, scored in each of the last two windows for the U.S., scored this week in the Champions League against Bodo Glimt. Pepi scored as well in the Champions League against Olympiacos. Haji Wright, we know what he's doing in the Championship, and he scored both goals in the win over Australia in the last window. So do you agree with me? These are the three for the World Cup, and they're all in pretty good form right now.
All in great form, which, you know, I keep knocking every piece of wood we have, because it's going to be such an important position to have somebody at that number 9 position that not only is full of confidence, but scoring goals. So ideally, look, I'm not willing to say that these are the three that you're going to see at the World Cup, because there's always somebody that comes out of nowhere, and not necessarily nowhere, but I just mean that it's going to be whoever's the hottest hand at that point is going to decide those last couple of roster spots. So it doesn't mean that Diego Luna's guaranteed a spot, because he's in a fight realistically with a lot of the players that you've listed that aren't a part of this roster. I think the one that really is out in the cold right now and is Josh Sargent. Norwich having a tough time. His goals have dried up a little bit. He was well and truly in that mix for a little bit, but I think these are the three guys. And then Ajamang is out on the outside looking in. He can maybe force his way back into there, but I do think then it would become between Haji Wright and Ajamang and whoever's scoring the best. But really just love to see, honestly, that Flo Balogun is in such rich form, and he's needed that. He hasn't really had that since before the Copa America, where he was coming into that tournament looking pretty good, but then all the pressure, all the decisions, it just feels like his growth has stunted since he's gone to Monaco. But starting to find his feet. And then Brendan Aronson, by the way, is playing really well with Leeds United right now. So he's in that mix, and he was on the outside. But yet I still feel that hasn't translated to the national team. And I still would have to say he's a bit of a bubble player in that position.
How about the goal Aronson almost scored against West Ham, where he took it from his own half? That would have been, I know the English would have never given an American this type of credit, but that would have been in the conversation for greatest goals in Premier League history.
Absolutely. And having that come from an American, I would have loved to see it. And again, look, I speak about the confidence so much, but for a player to be willing in that moment to, he gets ostracized, by the way, by Leeds United fans. He missed a sitter in a game recently, and the fans are screaming and yelling. And the next game, he plays a man-of-the-match performance, even so much that his coach had to come out and defend him to the public and saying, look, I know he's an easy target for you guys, but look at what this guy brings beyond just the goals and assists. So to see everything that he had been through, by the way, as a young player, came up through the Union Academy, which a number of these guys have, and then went to Europe, came through Salzburg, goes to Leeds, gets relegated, leaves, come back, and now has really just shown that he has that mentality to be able to. One player, actually, I just want to quickly go back to, we kind of skimmed over Noah Kai Banks in the defenders part as a player who was missing. I still kind of hold out a bit of an outside hope that I think he could be on the roster. He's actually now starting to play some consistent minutes and start. So I don't know if you still see him as a viable option.
You could see some comments on the screen here. Stu, I was a big fan of yours at Bolton. I followed that team for a bit, and then they got relegated.
Yeah.
And, well, you know, Mosse, howdy. Go Ducks. Is that Ducks?
Go Ducks? Is that because you're wearing a Michigan
Oregon
hat?
Yeah, well, let's not talk about that team. That Purdue performance has me very pessimistic about the Ohio State game. But by the way, classic Alexi. He's been texting up a storm during this show.
No. Wait. Does he even allow like airtime if he chooses not to like turn up today?
No, but
are you going to give it to him? Are you going to let him air his texts out?
He sends 2 angry texts complaining about what I've been saying, but then follows up with one more and says, enjoying the show. But we did throw up a tweet of his earlier that I want to revisit. That was just a general comment about Pochettino leaving players out and acquiescing to club requests. Sean, can we get that one back up again? What possible advantage does Poch get with the clubs of his players by not calling in Weston, Richards, Pulisic, etc.? There is only one more real window after this. Why does Poch need to make nice with the clubs? And yeah, that was my major point at the top of the show, and I think you agree. That's the one head scratcher about today. It does seem like Pochettino's really swerving out of the way to make nice with clubs very late in the cycle here when the World Cup is just around the corner.
And this is where I think he empathizes more than your usual international manager, because he was a club coach, and he is truly a club coach in his heart of hearts. And he referenced that recently in a BBC interview.
Yes.
If we want to go there. Yeah.
Let's go there. Mauricio Pochettino did an interview with the BBC, and he was asked if he misses the Premier League. And he said, of course, I am missing it. I am so happy in America, but also thinking one day to come back to the Premier League. It's the most competitive league. He was asked about that in the press conference today, and he said, look, it's an interview in England, so of course I'm going to say I missed the Premier League. But then he went on to say how happy he is coaching the U.S., so he walked it back a smidge. But, he's been linked to Premier League jobs in the last few months. There is this notion out there that he's not completely happy with his decision to coach the U.S., and that if the right job opened up, he would at least be intrigued. Is that the vibe you get, or no, you think he's feeling good about coaching the U.S. at this World Cup?
No, I think he's ecstatic to be coaching the U.S. at the World Cup. He's paid very handsomely. That's no secret. He will be coaching the United States in a home World Cup. I mean, what an honor that is, I think, for any coach to coach a team and a nation in their home World Cup. Bora Milutinovic will tell you as much with his experience with the U.S. in '94 and what that meant from, just a pride standpoint. And Pochettino is going to feel that pride. He is fully invested in the job. And I've sat down with him. He's a passionate guy. He loves football. He loves being on the field. But being a club coach and being an international coach is very different. There's very few international coach lifers. I mean, Oscar Tabarez is a coach that coached Uruguay for many, 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 many years. And there's very few coaches these days that sit in those types of seats, right? And that's what they live for.
Yogi Love, Didier Deschamps. There's some that stay a long time, but generally it's a job where you're sort of in and out and you want to get back to the club.
Yeah, and and then I think there's the coaches that fall in love a little bit with the international game. Roberto Martinez is a guy that kind of has stood out to me now. That is a guy, I followed him very early in his career. I played against his teams when he was the manager of Wigan and then Swansea, and he's went long time with Belgium, and now he's with Portugal. And my guess is that he would be a coveted international manager after he leaves Portugal. It's a nice cadence, by the way. You travel around, you watch some games, you call your guys in for camps every couple months. You're playing golf, you're a pundit on TV. I don't know what's not to like about that. But I just think that Mauricio Pochettino, to round out this conversation about him, I think he's still got his club coach hat on a little bit, and I think he's perhaps underestimating the expectations still and what I don't want to tell him how to coach his team, but that's part of our job. Is I'm not on the inside and seeing what he sees every day. And maybe he feels so confident that he knows what he's going to get out of Weston, and he knows what he's going to get out of Christian Malik, and he wants to just see these guys one more time. To me, I just think this team, having seen this team for the past, 4-8 years, and just where it's come since 2018, I just want to see this team building and picking up steam and not just trying to flick the light switch on when it comes June of 2026.
So give me the best starting lineup you can come up with from this roster that he named today.
All right. Matt Freese in goal. Serginho Dest, I'd like to see starting as the right wing back. I would like to see the back three being... I'm torn whether I want Scally to get a start or not, honestly. I think he continues to perform consistently at the club level, and I think if you don't do it now, when? So I'd like to see Scally. I'd like to see then Mark McKenzie as the center of the center backs, and then Tim Ream as the left of the center backs. Max Arfston getting the start, Tyler Adams, and then Tanner Tessman. Going forward, then... getting the start up front, I think let's give Balogun a game again and Pepe off the bench. Maybe start Pepe in the second game. And then Brendan Aronson and perhaps Gio Reyna. Let's go with it. Let's if you're going to bring him in camp, let's start him. Let's see what he can do. Give him a chance. If this camp is about giving Reyna an opportunity again and letting him see if he can prove and show you what he's got, start him.
I agree, but Alexi's not going to like that. He's unhappy with Gio Reyna's inclusion in today's roster.
I know. What did he say? I'm pulling up his text thread now. What has he done to deserve the call-up,
Alexi's texting has gotten to the point of distraction today. This would be like if during Lou Gehrig's at-bats, Wally Pipp had been heckling him from the dugout.
There's a reason I have my phone off during games, you know, and now I've gone digital with my notes every now and again. I have to, like, silence my iPad so they don't pop up, the texts. And sometimes it'll be something important. You know, someone will say, hey, man, you messed up the blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, dang. But I don't check social media. I don't check text. I got to focus. But now it's like Alexi. My watch is buzzing. Leave us alone, man. Okay? You didn't turn up to work today. You don't get to be a part of the show.
Now, Stu, as I mentioned, the two games coming up are Paraguay and Uruguay. I presume we'll do post-game pods after those. If you're around, you're welcome to join us.
I think I've been enlisted. I've got my 10-day contract again, where I think I'm in for the Paraguay game on the 18th. Is that right, producer?
Paraguay is the first game, so I think that's on the 15th.
15th. Yeah, I'm in for the Saturday one, yeah.
Excellent.
And then I feel like we should go for beers after. What do you think?
Sounds
great. Celebrate
a
U.S. win.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're just going to call it now. Anything we've missed here, Mosse? I know we're not going to drag on and do a super long pod here, but I think, like, give me your overarching takeaway beyond, like, are you excited for these two games? Because we don't have the grumpy pundit here.
The U.S. is capable of having a successful World Cup. They're at home. They have talent. It is a 48-team World Cup in which the U.S. as a host will be in pot one. So who knows? Maybe the draw will play out nicely for them. We'll find out on December 5th. But this is an odd run-up to the World Cup. I thought there would be more urgency in these last couple of windows in terms of team selection, and there's still an air of experimentation to everything. So I understand some of Alexi's frustration, but we'll see.
Okay, is it fair to say that the experimentation is going to stop in March? I mean, I know we said that, okay, guys, last window, we promised you all, the last window, the experimentation was done, and then, you know, we got a mixed roster, and then once again, we're leaving guys off. But I'm almost willing to push my chips in and say March of 2026. Like, if you're on that roster, you're going to the World Cup, basically.
For a guy that Pochettino wants at the World Cup to not be in the March roster, he better be injured, not, hey, he's just coming back or there was a coaching change or something. I'd like Pochettino in March to make an effort to get as many of the players in there that he is planning to take to the World Cup.
And the rumors have been that March and June, the opponents are going to be mega teams, and the games are going to be great, right?
The March window is going to be fun because that's when teams are going to schedule. I mean, Brazil, they're talking about France and Croatia as our two opponents in March, and both those games would be in the United States.
Yeah.
So that's when it gets
real.
And
I've seen everything, you know, from Portugal to you name it. I mean, that's the point as well, when not just the United States are thinking about these games more so through the lens of the World Cup. It's teams that will have qualified. They'll have their pots. They'll know who they can play, they can't play. They will also want to get games in the United States, Mexico, and Canada to acclimatize their players and get them used to our stadiums and the travel and all that different things. So it makes sense that everybody's going to come to our shores.
On the topic of Portugal, have you ever seen a cringier interview than the one Ronaldo just did with Piers Morgan?
Oh, my gosh. Alexi's buddy, Piers Morgan.
Of like the 10 most ridiculous quotes I've ever heard in my life, like 9 of them came out of that interview. It was
and rightfully so, by the way. The criticism of that interview has been scathing. Alexi, it was Pierce came on our show, our desk in Qatar, didn't he? And he had like a, kind of one-on-one with Lex at some point. I mean,
sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I wouldn't mind having a beer with the two of them and just let them rip. It's
At one point he asked Ronaldo, who's better looking, you or David Beckham? If neither one of you were famous and you were just walking down the street, who would get more attention? And Ronaldo said me, but that was an actual question.
Oh, Ronaldo said me? I'm shocked to hear that.
By the way, that's Sir David Beckham. He was just knighted.
Yes. The legend. I have a soft spot for Beckham. He was on my wall as a kid, as a United fan. I got to play against him. We captained opposing teams. Houston Dynamo against the Galaxy. And I have to say, it was one of those few moments in my life where I was coming out of that tunnel thinking, oh my gosh, I'm standing next to Beckham right now. And he's incredibly handsome and incredible soccer player. And then I proceeded to kick the crap out of him, and we beat him with the Dynamo,
There you go. All right, well, we'll end on that note.
Let's do it, man. That was fun. Thanks for having me in, Lex, wherever you are. Hope you enjoyed the show. Clearly, you're doing something you can watch. As always, make sure you like, you subscribe, follow the feed on YouTube. I'm not going to do the thing where Alexi says, but just smash the button. Lex and Mosse, they do a great job every single week. At this point, I'm on like a monthly contract. I get at least one appearance. But for me, for Alexi, Make sure, as always, you stay tuned. State of the Union, baby. And size the day.